Good morning, CLC. Thank you for being here, whether in the room or virtually. Thank you for your love. Thank you for giving and receiving all that you are, all that you do, all that you ever will be. I invite you now to join me in breathing in the love and gratitude that surrounds you, opening yourself up to the higher power, and as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Allow any doubts or stress or tension to just let go of for now. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in. And as you release this breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and receptive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one very special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me. I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or even on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in this room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
Good to see you all this morning. Here, actually, there, virtually. Tomorrow night, I'm starting a class called From Whence We Came on the history of New Thought. If you're interested in the history of New Thought, see me about it. There's a registration link on our website, creativelife.org. It's a 10-week class, Monday nights on Zoom from 6:30 to 9 Central Time. Love to have you with us. We've got a nice group going to be there, and you get to meet a bunch of people we're going to be in 6 different time zones. Isn't that awesome? Because we just added a student in Hawaii over the weekend. So 6 different time zones all the way across North America and the Pacific. On another note, in February and beyond, for some stretch anyway, I want to do a series on the inner healing experience. We haven't done that in years. And that's what you just heard Danielle read. Actually, she didn't read it. She recites most of it. She's got it memorized, you know. But she just looks like she doesn't look like she's reading. She looks like she's reciting it, you know. But I want to tell you, when you listen to the recordings of the service as an MP3 audio file only, which I do because I sit at home and move them into different formats and stuff. In other words, when you separate it from the video and you don't know who Danielle is, but you just hear a woman's voice reciting this material, when she gets to that last passage where we open our eyes and turn joyfully to our neighbor here, you can hear the smile in her voice. You can hear the smile. If you don't believe me, try it. Just turn away from the video and just listen for that smile, and you'll feel it there. Today, however, what you've come for today is part 2 of 4 of the basics of the science of mind. As I told you last week, this is about my favorite time of year. That's not really true, because I like every Sunday here. There's always something fun going on. But the basics of the teaching, especially if you're new with us, you don't have to be new today, but if you're new in the last few months or you just want a refresher, then this is for you. The basics of this teaching on which everything else is built. And last week I got 30 minutes out. I got 30 minutes out of simply the topic of there being one life, one power, one presence, one name for which is God. There is one. And we are all an expression of that one. We're all an experience of that one. This way of thinking, this theology of ours, called panentheism, if anybody asks you, which says that the divine presence, being infinite, is fully present at every point within itself, and at the same time is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, how can anything pull that off? Well, it has to be infinite in order to do that. To be fully present at every point within itself and at exactly the same time be greater than the accumulation of everything that it contains. That is this infinite presence. What this means to you and to me is that we are expressions, you and I, of this one in our lives, doing what we do, thinking what we think, feeling what we feel, and so on. And so is everybody else. And so is everything else. And everything is conscious at some level of understanding of itself. You and I, as humans, have a consciousness that's quite complex. We know this. We learn things, we develop philosophical ideas. The very fact that I can trot out a metaphor from time to time and have anybody understand it signals the depth of consciousness that we have as humans. When you were a little kid and somebody told you a story, they said, once upon a time, there was a, and they went into this story, you understood that there was a message in that for you. You weren't maybe sure what the message was, took you a while, and then the message changed and so on, but you were able to think, you were able to cogitate on a number of different levels. People are able to do that. Every species of life on the planet is able to rationalize, is able to think at the level that it needs to for its own benefit, for its own growth. We like to compare species and say, does my dog understand, Greek philosophy? Or say, well, probably not, but it doesn't need to. It does what it does to be fully a dog, right? And so everything is busy doing what it's doing. The spiders are knitting webs, and the birds are building nests, and everything's doing what it needs to do for its own greatest good. We humans have the ability to step back from all of this and to create art about it and to create music about it and so on. So there is one consciousness, one awareness, one life, one in which there are an infinite number of perceptions, an infinite number of perceptive fields. So when I ask you, how are you today, you look in a number of different places, don't you? Maybe not an infinite number of places, because who has the time, but you go down a list of things. Well, how does my body feel? How does my conscience feel? Do I have enough, is there enough oxygen in the room for me? Is there enough money in my pocket for me? Are there enough friends in my life for me? We evaluate, we take stock of things, and we decide the changes that we want to make. I'd like to improve my state in life, people often say, and that's what brings them very often to religion, that and fear. But the desire to grow and change and better oneself is what brings a lot of people into the self-help universe. So what do I do? Well, typically what we look for is somebody else to do something for us. We'll hire it out. We'll hire it out, If somebody could just come along and kind of fix me up and relieve me of my problems and usher in some good, well, that would be fantastic. Well, that's really not how it works. Because if they could do that for you, and I just had this conversation with somebody last week, said if somebody else could hold your consciousness for you, you would not be necessary. One of you would go poof and disappear, right? But everybody who's here has their oar in the water. Everybody who's here has a role to play. And that means we discover the light within ourselves and we do something useful with it. Well, how do we do that? Well, that's what we're going to get into today, is how this thing works. How this thing works. And how it works, according to Ernest Holmes, and you could do worse, how it works is that there is a dual nature to this oneness. There's a oneness, okay, bear with me, there's a oneness and it has a dual nature. But wait, that's not all. It has a triune nature also. It has a, what's next, quaternine? Oh, Lord. a 4-part nature, a 5-part, and so on. Everything branches out into multiple layers of perception and understanding and development. But let's just go with the dual nature for the moment. This is not duality, it's a dual nature. What's the difference? Is this just semantics? No. Duality means you have two different, let's say, polar opposites, and they're in competition with one another. One of them is stronger or wants to be than the other. And so it's a clash of the titans kind of thing. Well, here we're talking about a dual nature, not a duality. The dual nature, as it relates to metaphysical understanding, is that you are who you are and you do what you do. And you know what else does that? Is spirit, or the divine nature, or the one life, this oneness that we're talking about. It is what it is, the I am. You remember the I am? The I am that I am. Go and tell the Pharaoh that I am has sent me. The I am is busy being what it is, and it is also I am that and that and that. And it's doing something. It's a process. It is what it is, and it's having a process. Ernest Holmes calls this the presence and the principle. He also calls it the love and the law. He also calls it the conscious and subconscious. He also calls it the objective and subjective. And once in a while, you wish he'd stop calling it so many different things. It would be a lot simpler. But they all kind of fall out in a neat little pattern where there's the conscious, the objective, the perception that seems to exist at a remove from that which it's observing. You seem to exist at a distance from what you are observing. You're sitting there, for instance, now listening to me speak, and you're thinking, I'm not him. And at times I'm glad. No, I'm not him, and maybe he's going to say this next, and maybe he's going to say that next, and maybe here's how I'll apply it, and maybe I'm hungry for breakfast. And maybe I'm going to switch channels now and come back to this later, and maybe. And you've got all this stuff going. And so you're pretending for a while that you're not me. And I do the same thing because I'm up here imagining that I'm not you, that I have a talk to give to some people who are not me. Because if you were me, you wouldn't need the talk because it's already in my head, right? So there's a perception here. It's kind of a trick of the light that we're separate and distinct from one another, when really what we are is differentiated. We are experiences that the one life is having by means of us, and it needs all of us to do it, else we wouldn't be here, and each one of us has a unique twist that we bring to that. That's the objective nature of this. Each one of us has desires that nobody else has, even if it looks the same on the surface. It has a backstory that differs. If you want to go out, I think I used the example last week of an Italian restaurant, and what you expect in an Italian restaurant is Italian food and so on, the metaphor of that. Well, you go in an Italian restaurant, you have an experience of this that's unlike anybody else's because you have a history that's unlike anybody else's. You've had all kinds of things happen and not happen and so on, and you bring all that literally to the table with you every time you sit down, every time you walk into a room. You have this whole psychology that you bring to bear on the thing. So how objective is it? It's informed. Our perceptions are informed by our experience, right? And yet, at the same time, there's a freshness and a spontaneity that's possible for us when we recognize this and set our perceptions gently to one side for a moment. I'm going to pretend that I haven't seen this sunset before and see what it does. I'm going to pretend this is a winter's day unlike any other that I've ever experienced. Because to a great extent it is, and yet we perceive it through the filters of prior experience. So we manage consciousness in this way. We manage the consciousness that we are moving through. And we recognize it as objectively as possible. Let's just put it that way, when, in fact, the subjective side is so strong. What is the subjective side? The subjective side is what spirit does. It's where we're one on the subjective side of life, as Ernest Holmes put it. You see, I'm not wearing your clothes today. I'm not in your body today. We're each of us apparently distinguishable from one another, but on the subjective side of life, there's just this one stream of consciousness in which we are all waves or rivulets of knowing. And why that's good. It's not that we disappear into it. It's not that we lose our selfhood in it. But that's where our good is found. That's where our good is found. Because if you're sitting there wanting to know, when does this get practical? That's the corner that just got turned. You want a new job? Let's use that as an example. Would you like a new job? You know where the job exists for you? In the one mind. You know how you get there? Is you start acting as though you're in that mind already, just as you are, with nothing added and nothing taken away. For you, there is the right place and proper conditions. That's sort of Emerson for you. And it finds you. How? The same way everything else has found you. Think about your life up to this point. How did you meet the friends you have? How did you meet the partner you have? How did you happen to live on the street that you live on, surrounded by the neighbors you're surrounded by, and on and on and on? How was it that things just kind of fell into place for you? How was it you decided what you wanted to do with your life? How did that information happen to come to you? And how is it in an eerie and beautiful way that you can think about a song and turn on the radio and they're playing it? You know, that kind of thing. How is it that you have these psychic hunches and things about what might happen next? Is because you're one with life on the subjective side of life. You're one with life, and everything that you seek is in that life. And it works by affinity. It works by affinity attraction. That which we believe in, we tend to magnetize into our experience, or we tend to magnetize ourselves toward it, which functionally is the same thing. We tend to experience. Notice my emphasis on the word tend, because this is not a slam dunk every time, precisely aligning kind of a thing. Consciousness is a little bit more whimsical than that. But we tend to walk into a general framework of experience that we have positioned ourselves to have. Therefore, if we start managing that consciousness out front, proactively, we can create a general set of experience that looks more like what we want and less like what we don't. This takes accounting for our taste, our affinities, and focusing on those properties that we would enjoy in our lives with greater emotional involvement than we have with the fear of not landing in that space. Does that make sense? In other words, you tend to find that often in life, what you've learned is not only inaccurate, but is precisely backward. Most of us are taught in the culture, if you'll get what you want and have what you want, you'll finally be who you want to be. Metaphysically, that is precisely the opposite of how things really work, which is if you'll start out by being who you want to be, you'll do something out of that being, and you'll have, ultimately, the product of that doing. And what they don't tell you is that what you'll wind up having will be far less important, far less weighty to you and meaningful to you than it is now when you don't have it and you think it will make you enough. In other words, when you embrace your own, shall we say, enoughness, that's a very 70s word, 70s self-help word. When you embrace your own enoughness, you don't need to pilfer everybody else's. You don't need to kind of fantasize about control and power, and that you don't need as much approval from other people. And so you have, dare I say, more inner peace. More inner peace when you realize, I'm enough just the way I am. I'm enough just the way I am. Why am I enough just the way I am? And see, this is why we need this idea of oneness, is we track back to it, because it's like if you start making affirmations and stuff and declaring things about yourself, part of you is going to say, why? Now, why is this true? I say I'm beautiful and capable and happy, and today's a wonderful day, and blah, blah, blah. You know, there's some part of you who's going to say, really? Why? How is today different from yesterday? And yesterday wasn't all that great. And then, you know, next Tuesday you've got an important make or break kind of appointment, and this, you know, and the intellect gets in the way and it starts evaluating and comparing. Well, what you want to do is take control of the situation mentally and emotionally and realize that this is true for me. This affirmation that I'm saying is true for me, not because I'm the one saying it, and not because of the beautiful words are all strung together. This affirmation is true for me because of who my divine parent is, who the divine nature has created out of itself in the form of me. In the form of me. A star danced, and beneath that was I born. It went to the trouble. Life went to a lot of trouble to make you. You know that? You can sit through a film on human biology and realize this too. Life went to a lot of trouble to make you. Why? Because you're here for something. You're here for something. And you are a special gift to life because of what created you as a manifestation of itself. Ernest Holmes, we're getting into deep waters here, because the why of, like, why are we here and what's the meaning of life and all that kind of thing. Ernest Holmes brings up the idea, he says to him, just his idea, he says, so God, the divine nature, is having all these big ideas of what it wants to create, and if it couldn't actually create those things and have them be in form, it would be sad. It would be heartbroken. So if spirit could think you up, but you were just an ideation of it and not a practical outcome of it, it wouldn't be fulfilled. That's why it makes, as he puts it, worlds. Spirit makes worlds and peoples them with living things. Like this. Well, this is what you want to remember every time you affirm something. This isn't just me kind of in my little voice, I know there's one life and that life is. No, this is a declaration of, it's resounding throughout the halls of creation, this declaration, because of what made me. Because of what made me and what walks with me, as me, through me. So in the creation of our lives, we learn to play in this space called the dual nature. Now, the dual nature is, I gave you like 6 different sets of terms that apply to the dual nature. Let's focus on one of them for the rest of this, which is thought and feeling. You can go with thought and feeling, okay? Thought being the conscious, the intellectual, the objective, and so on. Feeling being the subconscious, the subjective, the abstract, and so on. It's the feeling side of the equation that in Western culture, anyway, has been the most neglected. We have run on sort of one cylinder much of the time throughout our history, which is think it up, okay? Come up with a plan, think about it. You have a problem, sit there and think about that. This is what I'm saying we were taught when we were kids. We were taught, if you have a problem, sit there and think about it. You just sit there and think about things, right? You sat there and you thought about the problem, you thought about the problem. The further you thought about it, the deeper you sunk into it, until it seemed like there was no way out. There's a little tiny circle of light up above you where the earth was closing over you, as you sat there with the problem. That really doesn't work. As a matter of fact, it gets you in practice to have further problems, because that's kind of what you're sort of inviting out of the process. You become a good problem solver. You've heard the expression, the one who is good with hammers, every problem is a nail. You become a good problem solver. Guess what good problem solvers get from life? You get more problems. I know, I'll send it to you, says the divine nature, because you seem to like this kind of thing. Meanwhile, you're saying, I'm really tired of this kind of thing. But it's what I know. It's what I'm good at. Okay, great. Here's some more problems. So what we want to learn to do is, when faced with problems, imagine the opposite. What would this space look like were there no problem here? And for instance, when Jesus talks about, you shall say to that mountain, removed, and it shall be cast into the sea, that was one of his great statements of metaphysical truth in Mark. I think Mark 11. You shall say to this mountain, remove, and be thou cast into the sea. He's talking metaphorically. He's not talking about the actual, well, I suppose he could be talking about the actual mountain sitting there, because you can move mountains with enough, equipment. But he's talking about the mountains in your life. He's talking about mountains of debt, okay? Mountains of fear, mountains of separation, mountains of loneliness, and all of this. How do you move a mountain? You picture a valley. You picture a clear space where the mountain used to stand. How would it be if I could have it be any way at all? And you get excited about that. You get excited emotionally about that. Inside, he goes to great lengths to say, you don't have to weep and wail and gnash your teeth and emote like as stagecraft, but you feel the thing. And I thought, how can I put this for me where it's most succinct? And I came up with this: you're all in. You're just all in. Are you all in? Are you all in your prayer work? If not, why not? Take a step back and have a look at it. Have a look at, am I willing to trust that there is a power that made me from within itself, and it didn't walk off then, leave the set. No, it's right here with me, as me. It's also in that which I am facing and those who I am dealing with, be they supportive and friendly or be they difficult. It's within this whole situation. Am I willing to be all in my belief that this is so? And I told you last week, he went to great, and I go to great pains to say that we don't teach you here what to believe. We teach you how to believe. We don't teach you what to think. Teach you how to think. How to think. And how to think and how to believe is to be all in on that which you wish to expand in your life. That which you, and whatever that is, up to you. Up to you. Whatever you like doing, more of. And I won't even give the usual disclaimer here that provided it's not harmful to you or anybody else, or, long list of fine print about this, because you know that. You know that. And if you don't know that and you think, well, I'm going to choose a whole bunch of stuff that's not good for me and it's not good for other people just to see if I can get away with it, well, you're going to at least have a learning experience, aren't you? When everything, goes sideways and falls apart, it's like, whoops, that didn't work. Well, now you know. And if it didn't work and now you know and you do it again and again and again, well, there's a word for that too. It's, self-flagellation, really. And you learn these things again. Eventually you get to the point where you're just tired of the struggle. And you're like, God, can I just have some peace? Where do you look for it? The same place you look for the trouble. The same place you look for anything. In consciousness. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine it? Now, once in a while, somebody will say, well, I can't imagine the good. I've been in struggle so long, I can't imagine everything being just beautiful and wonderful in my life. Well, can you imagine some improvement? If you took one trouble away and put some light in its place, can you imagine what that would feel? Start there. You don't have to knock down every wall in your life all at once. And this, frankly, is what turns a lot of people away from metaphysics, is because they come in and they hear stuff like, everything's perfect. You remember the dual nature? Okay. Half of that statement is true. That which is perfect is perfect. There is one whole life, one whole system, and it is intrinsically whole. Well, just whole. And another word for whole is perfect, like a perfect circle. It is whole and complete. What isn't perfect today is how you're dealing with that problem, and I'm dealing with that problem, and all of us together are dealing with these other problems. That's a process So you get perfection and a process. Which is it going to be? Well, you touch base with the perfection and you bring it into the process. You bring it into the process. There is one life. That life is spirit. That life is all the life there is. That's how we begin spiritual mind treatment. And sometimes people will say, well, you know, it's not enough to treat. Some of the wise ones among us, like, you hadn't thought of that, right? You know, sometimes it's not enough to pray. You've got to take action. Oh, I never thought of that. I just read an article about that, scolding and shaming about it. It's not enough to pray. You need to take action. It's like, for crying out loud, here I am, all these decades in, and I just realized I should, wait a minute, I've been taking action every day. You know what I've done every day in my life? Gotten up. Maybe I felt like it, maybe I didn't, but I've gotten up. Now I've done what needed to be done, and sometimes I guess I've laid there like in the wonderful John Prine song I heard Bonnie Raitt sing recently. There's flies in the kitchen. I can hear them buzzing. I ain't done nothing since I woke up today. Well, there's days like that too, but for the most part, you know, you get up and you do something. Of course you've got to do something. Here's the thing. You treat first. You treat first. You don't treat only. You treat first. You treat first. Then you follow the treatment into action. What do I mean by treatment? Spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, all in prayer. Prayer that's all in. Prayer that you buy with every ounce of your being. Prayer that you feel. And then you take action. And if you're not willing to take action, you got to revisit the prayer and say, was that really what I wanted? Is this really about my affinity, or is this what somebody else said I should have in my life? Was I settling for something less than what is most inspiring to me, you see? But first, last, and always, you pray. And then you lift the fallen, and you feed the hungry, and you house the unhoused, and clothe the naked, and so on. You follow that out in a natural way. This is not a teaching. This is not an otherworldly teaching. This is not a teaching that denies the physical and says all of this is a big mistake. You know, the fact that we're here in form. I've read stuff like that. It says, you know, people incarnated here because we were too stupid for heaven, so we had to come here and learn a bunch of things. And maybe we'll burn off some karma at some point and be... And it's just one more form of separation, isn't it? Might as well say some people just aren't worthy, because that's kind of where it's going, you know, that way of thinking. But no, that's not how it is. This is not a prison planet. We're here to exuberate our lives. We're here to do amazing things, be amazing things, and feel amazingly about our life and about one another. So the spiritual practice part of this is relentless. It's the only thing that you have to do. But it's not unlike other stuff in this life. Diet, exercise, they knock on your door every day, don't they? You can't eat one healthy meal a week and expect that to be enough, and you can't work out every now and then. It's a regular thing that you do. And the same as, you know, exchanging pleasantries with the people in your life. If you don't check in on your friends from time to time, they're not going to be your friends anymore, right? They're going to drop back to the level of acquaintances or even strangers and stuff. So there's stuff we have to keep up with. You have to keep up with the laundry. You have to mow the lawn. You have to do all these different things. Well, I got one more thing to add to that, which is more useful than, well, friends are close, but it's pretty much more useful than anything else I've just named. And that's a regular daily spiritual practice of prayer and meditation, to which you can also add some reading and listening and other things too. You can jazz it up with stuff. But basically, it starts as prayer and meditation, where every day you return to that one source. Without a big agenda, you just say, show me more of who I am. Show me more of who I am, because I'm all in. I want to know. I want to know who I am. I want to be the best version of me I possibly can be, so show me more of who I am. And it will do that. And one last thing for today, and we'll get more into this next week, obviously, is sometimes people say, well, you know, I would have an easier time buying all this if everybody were nicer. If, you know, if society healthier and stuff. And I get that, and that, it makes a lot of sense. But there's a school of thought that says that people show up in our lives to not only evoke compassion from us, to be of support to them, but they show up in our lives to point out where we need healing. So if you have an enemy, and I hope you don't, that's kind of, drastic, an enemy. But if you have a person in your life or a group of people or whatever, and they're just, they make your skin crawl just to think about them, well, it's about your skin crawling. That's what this message is. And if you start looking at it that way, life won't go to the extremes that it has to poke you in the places that hurt, If you are open to the lesson up front, you don't have to pay the experiential price. Show me who I am. Show me who I am. And parts of that will be a little bit uncomfortable. Because none of us is where we would be if we didn't need individuality at all. Or to put it another way, I hate to say this because this is so subject to misinterpretation, so it's my job to give you another 10 minutes to misinterpret it. Just what you wanted, right? All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Oh my God, what does he mean by that? Well, that's the Apostle Paul. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's not bad news. That's not bad news. That levels the playing field. Nobody has it all together. Not Jesus the Christ, not Buddha, not Ernest Holmes, not Mother Teresa, not whoever is on your list of completely exceptional beings of light. Everybody's working on something. Everybody's working on something. And so that means it's okay for you and me to be working on stuff. It means it's okay for us to realize that we still have some issues. We still have some resistance. We still have, but that's okay because we're winning at it. That's okay because we have a process to work with it. That's okay because it does open our hearts in compassion. Otherwise, we just breeze through the room past other broken, hurting people and just step right over them because it wasn't about us. But instead, there's a process going on that involves every one of us in rebuilding this world along the lines of peace and love and trust and harmony and understanding. So that's a little bit on what it does. And then next week, we get the way it works. And then the week after that, we get how to use it. And if you're wondering where I'm getting these from, they're the first 4 introductory chapters of the book called The Science of Mind, which we use as our textbook. And we have a big stack of them available over in the bookstore. You can get them online. And if it's too big a book for you, too much reading, you can start with this thing called You, or The Art of Life, or Creative Mind and Success, or some of the shorter Ernest Holmes books. Everybody, we all have our favorites, all of us who are, I'm reminding myself right now, too, that metaphor, we're going to talk about metaphor and symbol next week, and I have a metaphor for you that was shared with me last Sunday here in this room by a guest practitioner visiting from out of town. And wait till you hear, I'm saving it for, it's a standalone thing. Next week, Johnny Ezekiel, if you're watching in Edmonton, you get to hear your metaphor trotted out because you gave me permission to use it, dude, and so I am. But I'm crediting it to you as it rightfully should be done, But wow, what a metaphor for spiritual development and growth, okay? So let's note again. Now, I mentioned spiritual mind treatment. This is what one of them sounds like. I'll make it short and sweet because you're going to have another one in a minute. There is one life, one power, one presence. It's all the life there is. It's all the life there needs to be. All things are unified within it. It is my source. It is my home. It is the well at which I drink. It has within it everything that I might ever need to fully express in this world. So I trust it, and I go to it. I commit to it, to this, my spiritual home. I commit to revisiting this knowing in mind and heart. As I do, my inner eyes are open, my inner ears are attuned to the sensations of all creation. I feel the pulse of the earth. I feel and know the presence of all living things around me, all with the same life running through their veins. We are family. For this knowing, for this developing understanding of who I am, as the divine nature experiencing itself by means of me. As all of this unfolds, I know that I am guided by the intuition of oneness in everything that I think or say or do. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere I turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
And please, whether you're online or in the room, please sign up for the weekly email, because it's got this information and more in there. It's also got the live links where you can sign up for classes and find out more information. So it's really important. So please sign up for that. And as we come up to giving time, there's lots and lots of ways that you can give to us. You can actually give in the room. You can give by check. You can give cash. At the bookstore, you can always pay with a credit card. You can pay monthly, regularly with a credit card. You can pay through PayPal. You can pay through IRAs. There's lots and lots of different ways. So we want to thank you for your donations, and please continue to give them so that we can continue to put out more messages like Reverend Jesse did today, and the same that you will get in our classes and also in our book studies. So please say with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
much moisture is out there today, and I've still shocked myself a couple of times. Fortunately, I don't think I've shocked anybody else yet. Okay, there is a whole lot of stuff in my head. Let's see if I can get it all out in a manner that makes sense. Let's start with my usual announcements, which are the bookstore, because it's over there, including that stack of Science of Mind texts, and my personal favorite is this thing called You. That being said, because not everybody likes to read, because I got a few friends who are dyslexic, and I'm mildly dyslexic, and you may not want to read them. Well, there's good news. There are audio versions of some of them. There are a couple of different audio versions of the Science of Mind text, because I know Reverend Cynthia has read it. Well, you know, somebody else did too, this girl. I'm not quite finished, but every morning that is what I have been reading, is the Science of Mind text. Now, it got away from me, so it is not on the Creative Life Center's YouTube channel. It is, however, on the Running Rev Ryan's YouTube channel. So there is a YouTube channel out there called the Running Rev Ryan. That's me. And the Science of Mind text, up to about 2 weeks ago, is up there. And it's in the playlist by channel, or by chapter. So, and I read it, and then you do get a little commentary. So if you don't want to read the Science of Mind text, I will read it to you. I will read it to you. Now, that being said, this thing called You is on the Science of Mind, or is on our YouTube channel, as well as being on mine. So, you know, if you don't want to read the book, and give me a minute, and I will read you the others. If there is a book in particular of Ernest Holmes that you don't have an audio copy of, get a hold of me and tell me, and I will create one for you. Because these books are so good, and if reading is hard, I want you to have access to them in the way that I can do it, and that is by reading it to you. So, all right. Oh, okay. Thank you. So, I told Danielle I was going to get up here and do a shameless plug, but because it's important to me. You know, one of my friends who I went through ministerial school with, who I've heard rumors might be here in a couple of weeks, I asked him one time, I said, is there an audio copy of this thing called You? And he says, not that I found. And I'm like, well, dang it, now there will be. So, you know, I'm mildly dyslexic, I get it. Okay. And now, speaking of Dana, here's where every now and again, you got to do the hard thing. And the hard thing looks like treating about a situation that there's nothing you can do about it other than treat. And then maybe send a little money. Because there's some fires going on. Dana grew up in the Palisades. That's why I mentioned her. And how do you treat about something like that? I don't know. But I'm going to do it by going back to that mental principle, by going back to that oneness, going back to that place where nothing has ever been wrong, and holding that space, and knowing that in the end it will be okay. And so I'm going to know that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And that I am a channel for that love into this world. As I know that each and every living thing is a channel for that love. And so I am holding that love and sending that love out. And knowing that in that love, resources are moving. And the people who are responding, the first responders, the firefighters, the airplanes that go out and dump water are in that love. That all of the places who are taking donations for the people who have lost everything are channels for that love. And I am knowing that those resources are moving at the speed of that love and getting where they need to go. And that the first responders are safe as they do their jobs. And that the information is factual and true as it spreads out, so that the resources get where they need to go. And for the people, that the roads are clear, that they can get what they need and get where they need to be, and that they are held in that love. I offer that love, that peace, that comfort that comes not from me, but through me, as it does each and every one of us. May the winds quiet. May the rains come. And may the people do everything that needs to be done in that divine timing. And I know that with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me where to go when I don't know what to do. I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me who I am, who each and every one of us are. A teaching that reminds us that we are both brilliant masterpieces and works in progress at the same time. I am grateful for this community. I am grateful for our ministers. I am grateful for our practitioners. I am grateful for our musicians. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the technology that lets us send this out into the ethers. And I speak my word in love, with love, through love, knowing that it is done, even as I speak these words. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. I feel it in everything I am. I choose it. I trust it. I use it. And I love it. So it is.
So it is.